Hello, everyone. My name is Shanique Street, and I'm the Executive Director of Programs here at the Chamber Foundation, where I manage our Community Resilience portfolio. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation about how small businesses can build their resilience before, during, and after disasters. In a 2024 survey commissioned by the Chamber of Commerce Foundation and funded by the UPS Foundation, we found that there's a critical gap in disaster preparedness among small businesses. When businesses aren't prepared, this has devastating consequences for the economic stability of our communities. The research suggests that there is an overconfidence among many small businesses, where 94% believe they are ready to handle disasters, but only 26% have an actual disaster plan in place. About a third of small businesses affected by disasters took 6 months or longer to recover, with some taking over a year. The study found that the limited preparedness is due to perceived low risk and high costs of preparing. It is crucial that businesses are proactive in taking the necessary steps to become more resilient and better prepared for the challenges ahead. Today, I'm joined by Chris Stallings, the Associate Administrator for the Office of Disaster Recovery and Resilience Small Business. At the Small Business Administration, apologies. I would also like to welcome Jim Kelly, Senior Vice President at Fiserv. So Jim, let's start with you. Why is Fiserv prioritizing the focus on small business preparedness, resiliency, and community impact?
Thanks. Thank you so much, Anika. Thank you for having us as part of this great conference. Fiserv is focused on small businesses because so much of business in this country is small business. A vast majority of it is a small business operator. And when disruptions occur and small businesses aren't able to continue to operate, that becomes problematic not just for the business, but really for the community that they serve. Fiserv wants to make sure that we are helping everyone going through that process, making sure that we're reaching out and can help continue to have business operate, and again, have transactions go through and be able to continue to serve those communities.
Great, so important. Now, Chris, when small businesses and their communities are hit by disaster, SBA is on the ground with vital resources to aid their recovery. How are you working to ensure disaster survivors can easily and swiftly connect to the vital financial relief?
Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. It's so good to see you. At SBA, we're committed to the disaster survivor. And so whether that's the business owner, the homeowner, the renter, the not-for-profit, our commitment is the disaster survivor. And so how we can rapidly deploy our resources is not a whole of response, but an individual response to the scenario itself. So how quickly we can get on the ground. Our goal is 72 hours to have our team on the ground after a declaration, whether it be a presidential or an agency declaration, one of our many there. But for us, it's getting out there and having those community involvement engagements, whether it's at our chamber friends. We work very closely when I was in Georgia with our Georgia chamber. It's extremely important to get into those relationships, build those community lifelines. But I think it's also important that we reach folks where they are, not expecting you to come find us, but it's extremely important for us to come find you. We use technologies, we'll use canvassing, we'll just come sit with you on the front porch if that's what you need. The role and the goal is to make sure that we're getting our resources to you, making sure that you're capable to recover, capable to get back into business. We understand, I use this reference a lot. As the administrator points out, small business is big business, but especially if you grew up in a city like I did, McKaysville, Georgia, 1,100 people, you didn't have a whole lot of things. So the individuals and the businesses that you operate and represent, getting you back online for folks, especially in our rural communities, priority one for us.
That's so important, and thank you for sharing that. A question I have for both of you. So, of course, there are proactive measures that these small businesses can take that might determine whether they stay open or close forever after a disaster strikes. Jim, what are some of those proactive measures that these small businesses can take?
Well, there's the old adage, prior planning prevents poor performance, right? Making sure that you have plans and awareness of what you would do. What would you do if you lost your building? What would you do if you lost your staff? How would you handle if you didn't have infrastructure like power or internet? How were you able to go through that? Making sure that you have a plan is so important. You talk about some of the statistics that you began the presentation with. 94% think that they can respond, but when it actually happens, so many people are planning for the first time. So it's really going through and making sure that you do think about this. And small businesses are really focused on, hey, we want to start up, we want to expand, we want to do things. So rarely do they say, hey, what do we do when there's a disruption? And what we've been trying to do is make sure that people are aware of that and doing work with the foundation, trying to make sure that people are thinking about how to prepare for a disruptive event beforehand.
Thank you. And Chris, I'll turn to you.
I would say that as a business owner, you've got nothing but free time, right? You've got nothing but the opportunity to look for more stuff to do.
If only.
So, yeah. There's only, you're only working 25 hours a day, 8 days a week as it is. So what else can we do? But I would say this. In emergency management, we had a saying, and it was very simple. It says, the only thing more difficult than preparing for disaster is explaining why you didn't, right? So what can you do? We have something that we do is called a continuity of operations plan. Sometimes it's just as simple as writing down on paper so that when it goes bad, where can I find the keys? The next person that comes into my building, where do they find the keys? What is the password? When's the last time you pressure tested your plumbing at your building? Well, sometimes you need to pressure test your systems, test yourself. And so putting together a continuity of operations allows you to have an opportunity to work together, to look at some of these programs. Call your friends and say, hey, when it goes bad, what are you thinking about doing? You got any space? If it goes bad for me, I can come throw up an operation overnight. Having those blue sky day conversations, as we like to affectionately call them, are so much more important than the response in the gray sky moments. Going into a disaster with some of a plan is so much better than waiting for a disaster to cause you to have to create one. And so I would say, take a few minutes. I know you don't have a lot of those few minutes, but doing a little bit along the way will set you up for a lot better success. Our goal is to help you recover as quickly as possible, but it is a team effort.
Thank you. And another question I want to pose to you, Chris, is we know that the SBA utilizes partnerships to effectively reach small business owners across the country. Can you tell us about how you utilize those relationships?
Absolutely. So our SBDCs, our Women Business Program, our veterans business owners, we do everything we can. We engage with as many, but certainly I go back to the chamber. I was a huge advocate of the chamber, and I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting in front of you, I promise. I've bragged on the chamber even when I was in front of other organizations, because you're the lifeline, you're the backbone of your communities. You know who sells eggs. You know who has diapers that they have in surplus. You know that when you need cleaning supplies, this is the company that makes it. You also know who has retail space or empty space when we need to come in and set up a disaster recovery center or a business recovery center or a disaster loan operations center. So having those connections and working with our partnerships allow us to turn on those resources faster. I think that, we all have learned through whatever disaster or whatever hardship that you faced in business is that we're stronger together. Many hands make light work, however, whatever slogan or phrase that you like to use. But the more that we lean into this problem together, the more that we reach out to our technologies, but our human engagement. There's nothing in disaster that means as much as just sitting across the table from one another, sharing stories, sharing that opportunity to recover, and how we can come back stronger together.
So that's such a good point about making sure that you're having those conversations and working with the local communities, because those ensure a more sustainable response effort and resiliency all around. Jim, at the foundation, we greatly appreciate the Fiserv partnership, and we utilize the data that you all create for both operational and programmatic efforts. And I know one of the tools that we appreciate greatly is the Fiserv Small Business Index. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So the Fiserv Small Business Index pulls information from literally millions of businesses, small businesses throughout the U.S. We get this transaction information in a near real-time feed, and we are able to break this information down by business category, by zip code, by all sorts of different ways. And we make this information available for free to everyone. One of the times that we've used this just last year was with the foundation. We were able to share this data during the hurricanes in North Carolina, Florida, South Carolina, across that whole swath, to help track when certain businesses and certain types of areas were coming back, how quickly they were coming back, and when they would actually start to return to normal. That gives us a very quick ability to see what areas may need more help, what areas may need more services and additional components and capabilities. We have this, again, it's free on our website. You can download it and go through it. We formally put it out every month, but obviously in situations like that, we can get it every day. So there's a lot of really good information out there. But again, it's to help our small businesses to make sure that they know what they're doing and how we can get additional aid to them that we think is so important.
Thank you. In so many of these conversations that we have, there are discussions about measuring impact and the utilization of data and new forms of data. So, we really appreciate the work that you do through mechanisms like the Small Business Index. So a last question for both of you. Chris, we'll start with you. Please share a piece of advice with our audience members as they aim to support small businesses in these efforts.
I would say there's nothing that creates more excitement and energy in a crowd than when someone says, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," right? So I would say there's nothing more important than a true public-private partnership. And what I would recommend is that if you don't know your local emergency manager, if you don't know your state emergency manager, if you don't know who your resources that you can reach out to government to supplement and support you, then I would take advantage of that. My recommendation is find out who your local emergency manager is. In some small rural communities, it might be your sheriff, it might be your chief of police, it could be your fire chief. Wear a lot of numbers of hats. In Georgia, we had 159 counties. We only had 38 full-time emergency managers. So getting to know them is extremely important. Why? Because when it goes bad, you need to be able to grab hold of those resources. We come in to help. We want to be a good partner. But we understand that you know your business better than we will ever know it. You know what you truly need. Identifying what your weaknesses are going into disaster, I think, is extremely important. There are things that we're all good at, but sometimes we got to look in the mirror and say, all right, if it went bad today, what are we going to struggle at? And make that a priority. Even if it's finding someone who can help you with that solution at the end. I think a lot of times what we fail at, and when I say we, that's a royal we, including me, is that we love to talk about what we're good at, and we are quick to highlight the goods, but talking about those things where we're not as good and identifying those weaknesses going into problems, I think is extremely important. And so for me, last thing I would say is identifying your strengths, finding your partners that can help you with your weaknesses will go a long way going into disaster. Certainly at SBA, we would love to partner with you. We would bring our technologies, our friends, and our resources and be there to help you however we can. You can find out more about us. I would say, going to sba.gov if you're not familiar. And if any time we can ever be a partner, we would love to help.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim.
I just want to echo a lot of what Chris just said. It's having those relationships are so important, and you can't build a good relationship in the middle of a crisis. You need to know who to go to. You need to know who to talk to. You need to have that relationship and that trust. It was one of the things we talked about in one of the earlier sessions. having trust with people that you're able to talk to and go through, and be aware of what's happening in your community. Use things like, any sort of information source that you can get, especially during these types of events. I plug the Fiserv Small Business Index just because it's free and it's there, but there's a lot of different things that you can go through and do. And the big thing to remember is a disruptive event, a disaster, isn't going to send a meeting invite. It's going to happen when you least expect it. It will occur when you don't want it to. So you got to be ready for it. You got to think about it beforehand, because if you're thinking about it while it's happening, it's way too late.
Thank you. I really appreciate this conversation, and I think many of the audience will, so thank you for joining us. But talking about the public-private partnerships and how to utilize that in finding success in the work that we are all doing. You make mention of the importance of having conversations about preparedness during the blue sky moments. I really like that. And not just waiting for the gray skies or when disaster strikes. Both of you mentioned partnerships, building strong relationships, building trust with local community partners, and helping people develop their operation plans when things are good and not just when disaster strikes, but also the importance of data with the Small Business Index and working to identify where the resources are, to collect further resources to inform all of our work. So just wanted to thank both of you for joining us today and sharing your expertise in this important work. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us.
Thanks.